So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to broadcast so we'll do this, ancient Greece. Tomorrow I'm going to do just a short one, like another about 25-minute, 30-minute one tomorrow. And so I do AP US History on the Wednesdays at 9. So I'll do yours right after, so around 10 o'clock, but it'll be on YouTube. So if you have something else conflicting with it, you can just watch it on your own time. Sound good? And it's a good way to do that. And here's the thing. So Greece, there's a lot of good things I can show on this. I'm going to show a 22-minute little thing on the Battle of Marathon. That will literally change your life. So be ready. You might not want to, it might be too much for some of you. But the actual question is, I have a couple things, but would you want to watch an engineering and empire on Greece? Did you like that on Egypt? Would you like to watch another one in that kind of vein? I gotta admit, I like the engineering. I just think it's so cool. I have another pretty good one on, a couple good ones on Greek. They call it empires, but it talks about the Greek city-states, kind of goes through more of that. Engineering and empire does the history, but also talks about the buildings and the construction. I like, what would you rather watch? Or would you rather just do time march, run up hills? You think engineering and empire, or more the straight history? The what?
I like that engineering.
Yeah, I like that one too.
Let's do that, and that way I can fill in the blanks. I like doing that. I think they're fun. And the one on Rome is I'm definitely showing that one because Roman engineering is like the coolest thing. Let's go to Rome. Actually, I'm not kidding. Of course, I don't know if I'd want to. I'd be kind of scared to chaperone students on a trip to Rome. Yeah. I mean, because, yeah, it'd be a little different. Ancient Greece. All right, so let's get to Greece. Well, looking at that test, I know some of you had some problems on the short IDs. I'm telling you this. Everyone did it. Those that did it online, they're at home. They seem to do okay too. About the same. You have some problems. Just a few of the names got confusing. But the short IDs, for the most part, were pretty good. But I have to go through and look at your grades again. But since I changed how I was doing it, only had to do 3. I did give you a little more points than I originally put on there, so I just adjusted. So don't worry about it. So let's get to ancient Greece. And a couple things about ancient Greece. Talk about it. I've decided what I want to do with the gods. I think we'll have to make Greek gods. We'll just make big statues. There's some good stories. Maybe we'll watch really bad movies about gods, like Clash of the Titans or something. But there is one movie also that's about an hour and a half long, and it's from the early 1960s, about the 300 Spartans at Thermopylae. And it does a pretty good job, but it's also funny, kind of tongue-in-cheek way. I might show, it's an hour and a half, it's only a couple days. I might show that one too. But definitely do an engineering empire. This is a fresco on a wall in a Greek villa in Athens. And you know what a fresco is? It's a painting, but do you know how they do it?
Little tiles, was it?
Tiles are very similar. The colored tiles and put those together. And that's mosaic art, and there's a lot of that in this here, a lot. That become the Greek art, then Byzantine. And you see it on floor tiles. So you see a lot of that. In fact, I'll show you one of those of Alexander the Great. Great tile art. Fresco's a little bit different. They put plaster on a wall. Plaster. And that gives it a little texture, and then they paint the plaster. So as it dries, it gives it that kind of a rippled, really vivid color. If you go, and we will do, I haven't decided what we'll do on this, but show some pictures to talk about the Sistine Chapel in Rome. And that wall is a fresco. So it's painted on plaster, and it's amazing. Just the colors just jump at you. And this was a style that the Greeks used and the Romans used and go through medieval. It's not used as much anymore, partially because canvas is better now. So let's get to a couple very basic things about Greece. I have no idea how I did it, where it's going this way, but I decided to leave it. And by the way, you like the frescoes in background? That's how I like my backgrounds. Always the picture I used in the first one. I tried a different picture and you couldn't see it, so I used, the fresco works. So, we're talking about Greece here, and this was a really rugged area. It's all mountainous right here. It's relatively narrow peninsula. 1,000 islands right there. And it was relatively isolated because of the mountains. And when the Phoenicians were branching out here, then they kind of avoided this for a lot of reasons, but partially there wasn't a lot of good land. Here, with irrigation, good place for farming. So it's a little bit different. But there's where Greece sits in Europe. But it's on that route to here. There is a trade route established, trade route in the Mediterranean, and it's close to Asia Minor and therefore the Fertile Crescent. So it can get some of the advantages of it, but when they fight their wars or use up their land by irrigation, they survive. They can make it. And so, the geography of Greece. And the big thing about the geography, as you can see from this map, I just like this map, incredibly rugged. Mountainous terrain, high valleys, hot, can be dry, good for certain kinds of crops. But one of the things about its geography, you see it here too, and I just thought the picture of the island was neat. I have not been to Greece. I want to go to Greece. Oops. One of the things about this here is it makes it a little bit harder. It makes it harder for big empires. It makes it harder for bigger states to develop. So it's perfect for those city-states like it had already developed in Sumeria. So that's where you get, Sparta and Corinth and Thebes and Athens and Delphi, etc. And because there's a limited amount of space, a little bit like with the Phoenicians, they'll be open to colonization. They will spread to the islands and spread therefore to Greece and Sicily and all the way up into France and Britain. They're not quite the Phoenicians, but really close to the same kind of colonization. And the titanic struggle between Sparta and Athens, called the Peloponnesian War, the most important battles will be fought in Sicily. Because important colonies they both had there. And so that gives you an idea about this, at least the geography, but open to more states, but also kept them relatively isolated. But the vegetation would be different. Yes, they can grow wheat and barley. There would be animals brought in, but with mountains, you're going to see more of sheep. Sheep and lambs would be used. Sheep and goats, lambs. Oh, baby. I figured that one out. And they did not have horse. And when the first horse came, just like what happened across from the Hittites to the Egyptians, it was chaos. By the way, have you ever heard of the centaur? That was almost certainly talking about the invaders from Indo-Europe came out on horses. And they were brutal and cruel and so good at horsemen, they almost were like part of the horse. Centaur. The Minotaur appears to be a really ugly guy with like a bull. That's what it appears to be. The Minotaur is a man with a bull's head. Wouldn't that be awesome? But, now I forgot what I was saying. Back to the centaur. You knew what a centaur is? Half man, half horse. And Pegasus, what's Pegasus? Huh? Yeah, flying horse. I used to have one. And a flying unicorn. Same thing.
Yeah.
But, and so it was, and so they did have some of the crops, but mountain slopes mean a different kind of crop because of the way, certain sides we get the wind, the weather, and the sun, the rain and the sun. The two big things that really developed there, they weren't the only place, but really hit big there was olives, and got this olives and grapes. Grape production and olive production. Olive oil would become not only an important part of people's diets, but would become a major, major source of trade, almost money. And then grape, what do you get from grape? Wine. So like Egypt and Samaria, they drank a beer, which is nothing at all like beer today, but wine, that's more here. And then Italy, very similar. It was brought over by the colonizers from Greece, and then that would become an Italian thing. And then Spain, same latitude, mountainous areas, same kind of thing. So, important trade elements. And with islands, we get to all the little island city-states, but there really would not be one Greece. There'll be city-states would become more powerful and create alliances, but it would not be till, heck, we have to go into the 300s BC. Macedonia would finally pick up, and that's where we get Alexander the Great, and then a total shift in history. So, geography. And the first groups. So the Neolithic era, 10,000 years ago, these farmers came in, and they were probably those first ones from Asia Minor. So you're probably the same ones, the Sumeria, it spread from Sumeria to Asia Minor, which is Turkey today, into Greece. I should add, Turkey and Greece are almost at war right now. Right now, right this moment. An island, a Greek island right here, they might find natural gas, and the Greek fleet and the Turkish fleet at this moment are confronting each other. And they're all members of NATO, which is the military alliance that the U.S. is in. They're both members. This should be fun. Hopefully it won't happen, but both governments are pretty crazy. And then we get the Indo-European tribes, the Centaur. They came in, and we know this was a shock because all of a sudden archaeological evidence of them shifted from villages and stone construction of cities, but were relatively open to walled cities. That shock of walled cities shows that this invasion changed things. And it was clear they came riding in, conquered, looting, and pillaging, but then you get this blending of cultures we saw over and over again. And so there's still some place names that have the old original form, the original names that don't really fit into Greek. But then the newer names of the Greek, but we're not to the Greek alphabet yet. And sometime in this period too, these farmers started making, as they trekked to different islands to colonize and find better land, they made to Crete and Cyprus. And with them they brought their animals, and the big ones, sheep, lambs, and pigs. And we know from archaeological evidence they made that journey. And so those are some pretty tough pigs. I'll tell you about the Sparta pig broth tomorrow. Pig broth. I guess, does that sound good? I guess it was worse than it sounds. We haven't mentioned the blood. So, let's get to the Minoans. The Minoans were the first Hellenic or Greek civilization. And we're talking right here in Crete. And so the first evidence is Neolithic explorers, same kind of thing. But once you get that influx of the people from the Greek mainland coming in with the animals, just an explosion of civilization by 2000. And they were known for their art, their buildings. But the problem is we have a very limited knowledge of what they did because it was completely and utterly destroyed. Just completely destroyed. This is the remnants of one of the palaces near Knossos right here. I guess they're just amazing. And there's some pretty cool elements of it. But, by the way, just notice this map. That's not Rhodes. I just wanted a generic map to put in there where it was. Rhodes is here. That's Cyprus. I'm taking that. They lied to us all this time. Rhodes is a big island right there. So, there's a lot. Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask, is that area of the world right now being affected by the coronavirus?
Yeah.
Really? Everybody is?
Yeah, everyone is. Mm-hmm. And the thing about it is, speaking of the coronavirus, we don't know what it's actually doing.
Yeah.
Because people are dying at a much higher rate, but we don't know if it's coronavirus there, just as it is here.
Yeah.
So we don't know, but yes, it's happening. It's really bad in Syria with all the refugee
It's crazy
camps.
to think about because it's like you're only focused on like America right now. Like in America, you're only focused on it that you don't think about the other countries.
Yeah, and most countries have done a lot better. The U.S. has done really struggled with this. But yeah, other countries, yeah, like Brazil, it's
Yeah.
horrific, just horrific in Brazil. And then you go to places like, Costa Rica, and they've got it under control. And then there's Montana. Yeah, it's here, people. It's in Helena. It's in the schools. So be ready for all of a sudden everything's online. I'm sorry. And if it is, we just go with the flow, right? All right, so men, we know this from drawing. Men wore kind of a kilt, pre-kilt. Okay, so kilts wouldn't come around to the 18th century, but like a kilt, tied off, some kind of tunic on top or bare chested. It's hot on Crete. And we do know they're clean shaven. So they shave. And so brass that had to be sharpened all the time. I'm thinking how many nicks they must have had, just cut their whole face up, but clean shaven. And so we have a lot of that, but a lot of women. And women, it's actually, we know, very elaborate hairstyles, very elaborate. So they must have used all kinds of stuff to hold the hair, a lot of jewelry woven into the hair and to hold it in. This is a pretty cool picture here, but you can see it here too. And they wore long dresses, big wide sleeves, like big sleeves. And this, I guess, is even more than this, really noticeable on some. And they must use some kind of girdle and cinch. Their style was really tight in here. And that comes and goes throughout history. I hope it's probably gone forever, but you see pictures from like 1890s and women did that. And so they must have had some kind of girdle that they would, and I didn't want to think about that, that's the rib breaker. It's whatever. But that was the style of women, and we have a lot of women in very formal situations. It's clear that women had a higher status there than other places. Please be the right slide. Most of the gods were female. The most famous, and this might be one of my most favorite pieces of art, the snake goddess. You see how it's holding the snake? Snakes. The snake goddess. And they would lead religious processions, government processions. The idea of the Olympics, which we'll talk, I don't know how old we are about the Olympics, but the idea of the Olympics came from Crete. So athletic events. They even did the most dramatic one, which I'll show you in a second, bull leaping, which you will have to do this year. That was just added by the school board as a graduation requirement. It's not so, a patriarchy is a male-led society. It's still kind of a patriarchy, so it's not a full-fledged matriarchy like some of the more early societies were, but definitely women had more influence and decision-making power. They're more like the voice behind the scenes. And our close comparison would be to like the vast majority of tribes, American Indian tribes in the Americas. A few were matriarchies, but every one, especially before Columbus when the diseases hit and it all fell apart, women made the big decisions. And so that's what it seems like what's going on here. But when it became a contest for men on who could own what, I own this, then it became more of a patriarchy. It's mine, and that includes what's going to happen to women. And I do love that snake. I want this. I would buy a miniature one of this just to have. I just think it's so just like, yeah, with the snakes. I think that's hilarious. So, what they're best known for these incredible frescoes. Palaces. This is one of the frescoes. And by the way, you notice skin color? Skin color was irrelevant. It was just skin color. When you see pictures of this, we'll come back and I'll show you pictures of Hellenic society in Egypt, because the Greeks would take over and dominate them. they'd have all kinds of different skin colors. You see it in Roman history. The concept of race would not come about to the 17th century. That did not exist. Slavery in the colonies. You might remember from last year Bacon's Rebellion, that whole thing, yeah. So here is a drawing of the great one of the great palaces at Knossos. This is a, you see this with the fresco here, and they have indoor plumbing. In fact, the plumbing, some people say the plumbing might have been better than Roman indoor plumbing, and therefore you would not see the likes of that again until the 19th century. I think part of the reason it's better is the Romans used lead pipes. I think you know the problem right there. They didn't know how toxic lead is. We didn't know how toxic. We still are just starting to figure out how toxic lead is, especially for children. It is like horrifically toxic. It makes you violent, less intelligent, less able to make decisions, and could eventually degenerate you and kill you. So people who are lead infected are more violent and irrational. I'm saying that because I'm from a lead infected generation. I probably consumed 100 times more lead than you have. Because that's all I had to eat when I was a kid. Lead, that's all I had. Do you know why? Gas, yeah. We used to put in gas. So it's all in the atmosphere. So we'd be sucking it in. They got rid of it in '86, and it's just not as tough anymore. Tough. And that's why we gotta be careful around. That's actually, unfortunately, really true. We are a little bit touched. But the running water thing is pretty amazing. So they had a sewer thing where they would flush, or they had toilets where using gravity, water would flush it out. Not a heck of a lot different, not quite the same toilets that come up with the late 18th century, but and it would be designed to withstand earthquakes. They were designed to be strong enough. So Crete has earthquakes all the time. And it's almost certainly a volcano and the earthquake that went along with it that probably destroyed the Minoans. So, do you get the point here? They're pretty impressive people. But they just disappeared. Here's the most famous one at Knossos, a 3-acre palace. This massive palace complex with this central court, a throne room. I mean, there's elements that are still there. See that picture I showed you earlier? That's those walls. In fact, I'll go back. Right here, see that? That's right there. So there's elements of this. This was discovered in the 19th century, and it just blew people away. They had seen little bits about them, but there would be a dark ages in Greece, so they missed a lot of this material. So we don't know what happened to them. It's one of the great mysteries. They were known for being commercial, very much involved in shipping. There's one of their a model of their trading vessels, and they would trade throughout the Aegean world. And palaces would control all of the production, farming or any manufacturing would be controlled by the palace. So this should remind you a little bit of, this goes back to Samaria and Phoenicia. And remember the sheep? And so they had the olive oil and lots of lumber. And so they make a lot of trade with Egypt for luxury goods. And they developed a pretty powerful navy and merchant fleet. But it's one of those it just disappeared. All commerce means is trade. And so we see elements of them. I guess they found archaeological discoveries of Minoan, clearly Minoan palaces in a few of the islands. Does anyone cook with olive oil if they cook or use it? See, this olive oil was like unheard of in the U.S. until like the 1980s. They only used vegetable oil. And so it became like, oh wow, olive oil, this really exotic thing. And it's so much better. I just drink it. So, speaking of that, let's get to bull leaping. Bull leaping will be one of these sports activities. There's a bunch of pictures of these, and we're still trying to figure this out. So here's a painting of what the bull leaping does. And these are women who would do this. and they have a bull, they get them all fired up, so they would stab them or something. So it's not bullfighting. So let's be clear, they're brutalizing the bull, but the bull goes running, and the idea is you would jump over the front of the bull and kind of launch yourself over it and flip on the bull. And men and women did this, and supposedly women were the best at this. So, you know, that gives you an idea why it's not a full patriarchy like you would think. And so I assume that she's about to jump. If they're catching, if they're throwing, there's some things that are really inconsistent. People have tried this. And I've seen bullfighting, I've seen examples of them trying it, and no. I don't like bullfighting anyways, but bull leaping's a lot different. Wouldn't that be, at least at an assembly, wouldn't that be fun? They just call random people out and say, all right, you get a bull leap, and here comes the bull full speed at you. I'd go. That's one I would not miss. We don't know what happened. Somewhere in that, 1350 and before, I was going to put theory 1, I made a little typo here. I was going to theory 1, and I just decided to get rid of that, and I forgot to take out theory. I'm going to change that now so I don't forget. So let's get rid of that. I don't like it. Okay, all the palaces destroyed. And that's something, they're all destroyed. I mean, not just like, oh, they degenerated. No, they are destroyed. Brick by brick, fire. This was a conscious effort to destroy them. So invaders trying to, maybe it's to go down with the storm. Maybe it's, earthquake at the end of civilization. This looks like a painting of invaders. You see that? Of maybe the sea people. And that's where we get maybe one of two things happen. One, they were invaded by the Mycenaeans. Now the Mycenaeans were the Greek city-states that were just developing with a lot of Minoan influence. So maybe it's them. Maybe they're trade rivals. Maybe there was or military rivals. But the problem with this one is the Mycenaeans are individual city-states. And for them to be powerful enough to do this, it would have required something else. And that's why theory 2 seems to be better. On the island of Terra, a volcano erupted, and it seemed to destroy it. It covered it with volcanic ash. Crops died. A bad eruption also meant for a bad crop year. And when that happened, the Mycenaeans, then they came in, and it was relatively easy to destroy. Maybe a last-ditch defense, or we're going to make our own culture. That seems more likely, but I don't know. And to this day, they're not really sure. We do know that this was a time in other places. There would be huge disruption and disaster in Egypt. The Hittites happened in Sumeria, time of drought. And so it appears to be some kind of climate, natural disaster related event. The odds are this appears to be the best. But the Mycenaeans almost certainly were involved. And they were greatly influenced by them. So it's one of the things where they're their own ancestors. So they literally gone. Disappeared. By the way, what legend came out of this? Have you heard of Atlantis? That's almost certainly Atlantis comes from this. Atlantis comes from this. Almost certainly. Can't guarantee it, but.
Would people think this is Atlantis?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is Atlantis. Some great civilization that disappeared. Island out in the sea. Of course, it could be in the Bermuda Triangle. Right? I don't know. Right here? one of the mini Bermuda Triangle conspiracies. After we finish Vietnam and special topics, we're doing conspiracy theories. So, with that, let's get to the Miocene age. And so it overlaps with the Minoans, and they definitely took advantage of Minoan skills and then helped that to invade or to conquer them. And this combined a little bit of the Minoan civilization, but look at all the palaces. These are palaces and city-states all over. You see archaeological evidence. That's one of the great things about Greece, as I understand it. If you like Greek ruins, well, of course, it would be Greek ruins if they're in Greece. But if you like ruins, Greece is amazing. Of course, Italy's a little like that. But in this era right here, and at first, they would be seen as, especially by the Minoans and also future Greeks looking back, as quasi-barbarians. But the barbarian thing is, I'm using what we might think of barbarians. This is actually confusing because it could be that just they haven't quite totally adopted the Greek language. Because to Greeks, all barbarians were just people who didn't speak Greek. And to them it sounded like ba 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 ba. Therefore, barbarians. We think of something else, but it doesn't necessarily mean, you know, a bunch of Huns. So we know about the Minoan influence, but we don't know the exact amount. And they clearly influence each other. So there's a going back and forth because it's relatively close. But can't understate that. Much of their religion comes from the Minoans. There would be female goddesses, but as men became more dominant, you're going to see a lot more male kings. And this weird, or male gods, combination of gods that interact in society that outside. And that comes from the heroic age, which we'll get to in a sec. So, palaces. Once again, like the Minoans, they're going to build these very elaborate palaces. This is at Mycea, and this is where the king and the bureaucrats are the government workers, the clerks, etc., they would live. And like the Sumerian ones, these would be places that could not only be for ceremonial purposes, but also to store food. And also, they would have the marketplace, a protected marketplace, and it would be walled in a city. This shows the influence of potential invaders. They were worried about that. And you could have the market in here where people could buy and sell goods, at the same time feel relatively safe. And they did develop a system of, not quite roads, but close enough where they would spread information to runners, and then would have horses by horseback. And so you have everything in these palaces. And these would be pretty common, these self-sufficient, relatively protected areas. A lot of this still remains, but for example, at Mycea, they have protected gates. In a gated city, a walled city, the most vulnerable place would be the gates. And so you see elaborate defenses, like here, where you had to go through two walls to get through this gate, so they could, on top, an invader will be fired on from above. The idea is to make the gate protected, so you have to go over the wall. This lion's gate, please, where's the mouse? Where's the lion? Here's the lion's gate. That's the lion's gate. Making sure this is all filming. Indo-Europeans invaded the Greeks. And I agree. Why did, someone asked me a question, why did bull leaping in? Such a great sport. Sorry, I got to change my bit rate. I know. You would think my bit rate would be set, wouldn't you? Yes, the Greeks had lions. There were lions in Greece. There were lions all over the Mediterranean world. And yes, humans would kill almost all of them. And I like lions. I don't want to pet one if I see one in the wild, but I really like lions. So that's Lionsgate. You see the lions right there. It's that great picture. You see the walls and how it's protected. That still exists. Let's talk a little bit about their religion. So they too had, very much like the snake goddess, the Great Mother. This is the Great Mother right here. And by the way, you notice the way they have her shape. This is different than MINOAN, with the very narrow hips. I think this is for mother, the idea of that childbirth. Healthy, having children. And they also were the first ones taking it from the Minoans, but emphasizing the main gods, Zeus, Poseidon. Poseidon's the god of what? What?
Water.
Yeah, the sea, the water. Hermes, Apollo. We'll come back to the gods a little bit. And the Minoans had a little bit of written language, and they had their own linear B like the Egyptians did, which were this pictograph language. And they used the fresco. They did have some ivory art that would be traded for in Egypt. In Egypt, they would get them down the Nile, the vast trade networks. And of course, stone, a lot of stone masonry. We know a little bit about this because of the linear B, but it would all, there too are going to be destroyed. And so we have bits and pieces that are missing. Good? And so, sometime around 1250, all the Mycenean palaces were destroyed. Same deal. Very consciously destroyed. Only the palace in Athens survived. And that's where Athens, when it would come out of this, when the Dark Ages would end, they had this feeling that we're really Greek society. We represent Greece. Let's quit right there. I will finish this part and a little bit of Athens, and I'll decide what to do with the gods tomorrow. Sound good? So maybe 15, 20 minutes tomorrow. And Attica is the area around Athens. So it must have been an absolute catastrophe. When you lose 90% of your population, yes, a lot moved away, but so 90%, everything they once had blew up, we just don't know. And so much is going to be lost. And so when you get the Age of Heroes, we talk about the Iliad and the Odyssey and the Siege of Troy. That is looking back at this Dark Ages and kind of coming up with heroes and how they did it. We'll talk about that tomorrow. All right. Have a good day. I'll see you next week. Speaking of that, I'm going to look and see how many cases we had today. Well, that's 321 new cases.
Oh my gosh.
How many in Lewis and Clark County? 33.
Oh, wow. Yeah, my friend, she goes here. She's like a senior here. Both of her parents got tested positive, and she got tested negative though. But both of her parents were positive.
So she has to be. They're quarantined from her, I assume.
Yeah. Crazy.
Are they sick or?
Yeah, they have like a lot of symptoms and stuff.
Yeah, Dark chocolate.
What about like the raspberry cream ones?
Oh, those are good too.
Yeah, those are good.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, they're so good.
Oh, they're
I have to go buy some
I have some extra.
after
I'll
I
bring you one.
finish, paying off all
I
of
mean, the white chocolate are fine, but they're not as good as it.
Yeah. Ooh, hear me out. A Kit Kat and a Reese's combined.
That's worlds colliding.
So good. What do you guys think? A Kit Kat and a Reese's combined.
Oh, that's just genius.
Exactly.
Is that your child?
What else could you add to?
What?
What else could you add to?
Coffee crisp.
Oh, sounds
What?
good. Coffee.
Coffee crisp.
Wait, so is
Kit
it like
Kat.
in the form of a Kit Kat, but you just put peanut butter in it?
But then what if it was like a Reese's cup and then you just had
No,
like
it's like a
flavor?
sugar,
but you just have like the
it's
crunch of
infused
Kit
with
Kat?
peanut butter.
Okay, we're just dropping everything we're doing and get to the bottom.
I think we just make
You
it
have a
go,
layer
go
of
take over
wafers.
culinary and
Then you
make
have like
Okay,
peanut
we
butter.
go
Then you have like a layer of like
Then we
the.
add peanut butter into them, make sure they put the side Kit Kats.
Ah,
What are they? I don't know what like the.
or like peanut butter
The
coating.
filling of like coffee crisp is. It's like the. I
Is
don't know.
that in the Kit Kat?
No,
Oh,
I'm
like-
saying you can add that too.
Like
Yeah.
coffee soaked wafer covered in chocolate.
I've had the
Like
coffee.
tiramisu a little bit.
Yeah.
Tiramisu.
So somebody got me a box from Japan, Japanese Kit Kats, and they have like 5,000 flavors. I'm not kidding.
They have like wasabi.
I think they do, but I hate it.
That'd be so disgusting.
You don't like wasabi? I love
That would be.
I know, my wife loves it too, and I hate it. I wish I did, because everyone says it's so good, and it just tastes awful to me.
You know what's good is the Safeway sushi.
Oh, it goes with the shirt.
Safeway sushi.
Safeway sushi? Really?
Yeah. Their sushi's actually pretty good. It's pretty cheap too.
Okay, so a couple things. First off, so my plan is to start the presentations on Thursday. And what we're gonna do is I'm gonna record it. You still have to know a little something from me. You have to watch it. So try log on if you can on Thursday and Friday. I'll do it on Teams, so we'll broadcast it on Teams. So we'd like you to log on, but I'm going to record it too. And yeah,
Your lectures, I think, are at the very beginning. So what are you broadcasting?
the presentation's on Thursday. So we're going to start this thing on TET, and we'll see. And it's really good. I couldn't get it to work for a long time, and I was starting to panic. But I got it to work. Rest easy. And I was like, God, I was ready to throw the thing. So I was sitting there in the third period before it started, and I was bragging, jokingly, about how they sent me all the DVDs for the series on the Vietnam War. And PBS sells this for like $100, but they sent it to me because I'm so cool. Okay, yes, it's the educator's version they sent to all social studies teachers in the country, but I'm taking it like I'm cool. And it wasn't working, so they were all laughing at me, so they will pay on their test. But, so we had to do that, and